The old man was already awake, long before the room admitted it was night. He sat quietly in the chair near the window, not moving, not waiting, just being there. The lamp beside him glowed softly, casting a warm circle of light that never reached the corners of the room. The rest stayed dim, comfortable, unchanged. The curtain by the window moved gently, not suddenly, not loudly, just enough to be noticed. It rose and fell, as if the night itself was breathing. The old man did not look at the clock on the wall. He had stopped counting time years ago. Time behaved better when you didn't stare at it. Outside, the world was quiet. No voices, no footsteps. Just the soft suggestion of air slipping through a crack in the window. The curtain lifted again. The old man closed his eyes, only halfway, the way someone does when they are still listening. He remembered when nights felt longer, not heavier, just wider. Back then, silence had weight to it. Now it felt like a blanket. Light. Familiar. His hands rested on the arms of the chair. Still warm, still real. The chair had been there longer than most things in the room. It knew the shape of him. It knew when he leaned forward. It knew when he let go. The curtain moved once more, slowly brushing the window frame. There was something calming about watching it. No pattern to follow. No rhythm to learn. Just motion without purpose. The lamp did not flicker. The room did not change. Only the night moved. Breathing slowed. Without instruction. Without effort. In and out. The old man opened his eyes again, just enough to see the light. The wall, the gentle shadow of the curtain drifting back and forth. Nothing needed to happen next. Nothing needed to be remembered. The night had already decided this moment was enough, and the curtain continued to move, as if it had all the time in the world. The curtain kept moving, not because the wind was strong, but because the night was patient. The old man noticed the smallest sounds, the faint hum of the lamp, the distant, almost imaginary sound of a city resting far away, and beneath it all, his own breathing. Slow, even, unconcerned. He shifted slightly in the chair. Not to get comfortable, he already was. It was simply the body reminding itself that it still existed. The clock on the wall made no sound worth mentioning. Its hands moved, but quietly, as if they didn't want to interrupt anything important. The curtain lifted again. This time it stayed up just a little longer, hovering, before settling back down. The old man remembered a different window, a smaller one, with paint peeling at the corners, a place where the night air smelled like dust and rain. He didn't try to follow the memory. Memories were like the curtain. They came forward when they wished, and left when they were done. His eyes grew heavier, not from tiredness, but from permission. There was nothing left to watch closely. The room had revealed everything it was going to reveal. The lamp's light softened, or maybe his eyes simply cared less about sharp edges now. The chair creaked once, a low sound, old wood speaking to old bones. The curtain moved again, gentler than before. Outside, the building across the way stood quietly, its windows dark, its stories asleep. The old man's thoughts slowed, stretching out, losing their need to connect to one another. One thought drifted in, then drifted out. Another followed, lighter than the last. His breathing deepened. In and out. The room felt warmer now, even though nothing had changed. The night was doing its work, without asking permission. The curtain brushed the window frame softly, a sound so small it barely existed. The old man smiled, not because of happiness, but because of familiarity. This moment had visited him many times before, and it always knew when to stay. The lamp continued to glow. The chair continued to hold him. The room continued to be enough. Nothing else needed attention. The night had plenty of time. and so did he. The night did not rush him. It never did. The old man remained in the chair, his body still, but not stiff. There was a difference, and the night understood it well. The curtain rose again, slowly this time, as if it had learned the rhythm of the room. A thin line of cooler air slipped inside. It touched his cheek. Not cold enough to wake him, just present enough to be noticed. His eyes stayed open, but their focus softened. The lamp on the small table seemed farther away now, as if the space between things had quietly stretched. The clock moved forward, one silent step at a time. Time here did not count itself loudly. It simply passed. The old man's hands rested on his lap. They no longer remembered work. They no longer searched for purpose. They had done enough. The curtain whispered against the window once more. That sound reminded him of long evenings, when he would sit without knowing why, only knowing that standing felt unnecessary. Back then, the room had felt larger, or perhaps he had felt smaller. Now the room fit him perfectly. His breathing slowed further. Each breath arrived gently, paused, then left without resistance. There was no effort in it anymore. Outside, a distant vehicle passed, its sound already fading by the time he noticed it. The world beyond the window continued, but it did not demand participation. The old man's thoughts loosened their grip. They no longer formed stories. They no longer searched for endings. They simply floated, like dust in a beam of light. The lamp flickered almost imperceptibly, not failing, just aging. The chair held his weight faithfully. The curtain lifted once more, then settled. As if satisfied, the room felt steady, complete. His eyelids grew heavier now, closing halfway, opening again. Not in decision, but in habit. The night wrapped itself around the edges of his awareness. Nothing needed fixing. Nothing needed remembering. Even the idea of sleep felt optional. He remained there, balanced perfectly between being awake and being elsewhere. The clock continued its quiet work. The lamp continued to glow. The curtain rested, and the old man stayed, exactly where the night wanted him to be. The room breathed quietly, as though the walls themselves were listening. The lamp's soft glow painted a muted circle on the floor. It was warm, comforting, but not intrusive. The old man shifted slightly, just enough to feel the softness of the chair. His gaze wandered to the window. Outside, the night seemed thicker than usual, pressing gently against the glass. The curtain moved again, this time with a deliberate grace. A whisper of wind carried a faint scent of something unseen, the smell of distant rain, or perhaps of leaves long gone. It stirred memories he had not thought of in years. He did not speak. He did not move beyond the chair. There was no need. A small table sat beside him, holding a cup he had forgotten to fill. It was empty, yet it didn't matter. Time had become a gentle companion. Its ticking, once loud and demanding, was now a subtle rhythm, almost like breathing. He let himself follow that rhythm. One breath in, one breath out. The curtain lifted again. The wind teased it slightly, revealing a sliver of the world beyond. Streetlights glowed faintly, casting long shadows that stretched like curious fingers. He noticed a shadow moving, but only as a shape, not a story. It didn't need to be understood. It simply existed. The lamp flickered ever so slightly, casting a momentary shiver across the room. And in that tiny shift, he felt the room breathe with him. Outside, a lone car passed. Its sound was distant, already folding into the night. His mind, usually noisy with recollections, was quiet now. Fragments of past evenings drifted lightly, like dust motes in the beam of lamplight. He remembered the warmth of an old blanket, the gentle weight of it against his legs. He remembered the hush of snow falling outside a long-forgotten window. These images came without urgency and left just as easily. The clock ticked onward. It was neither fast nor slow. It simply continued. The old man's eyes softened. They were still open, but they no longer sought anything. The curtain lifted slightly again, as though it too had a mind of its own. The night seemed to listen. And in this room, everything existed solely to be. Time, wind, shadows, and light, all mingled with his presence, without demand, without expectation. And so he sat, in that familiar chair, letting the night envelop him fully, yet never entirely hiding the world beyond the glass. Each second stretched, each sound softened, each breath was weightless. And he remained, a silent witness, to a room that held nothing, yet contained everything. The night outside deepened, folding itself around the edges of the window pane. The curtain swayed gently, like a quiet hand brushing against the air. Its motion was soft, unhurried, yet somehow deliberate, as if it knew the secrets the room held. The old man remained seated, the chair cradling him just enough to make movement optional. His fingers rested on the arms of the chair, loose, unstrained, while his eyes traced the subtle shadows that the dim lamp cast across the floor. Every object seemed to breathe along with him. The cup on the small table, empty yet present, echoed a calm solitude. The walls, painted in soft, muted tones, absorbed the silence, holding it without complaint. Outside, the wind shifted. A faint rustle moved the curtain again, making a playful dance with the streetlight's glow. For a brief moment, he saw the world beyond as a gentle blur, a place that existed but demanded nothing from him. His mind did not chase the past tonight. It did not weave stories or recall old regrets. It only observed, as if it had learned patience from the room itself. The shadows on the floor lengthened. They twisted slowly, pulling the lamp's light along with them. A creak in the old wooden floor whispered through the silence, a small reminder of the home's long history. Of footsteps once hurried, now faded into stillness. The air carried the faint scent of the outside. Damp earth, faint smoke, and a whisper of pine. It mingled with the warmth of the room, blending a quiet comfort into every inhale. He looked again at the window. The curtain moved as though breathing. Each gentle lift revealed a slice of the night sky, yet nothing intrusive, nothing demanding. The old man's eyes softened further. He did not need to close them. They rested on the subtle light shifts, on the shapes of shadows bending around familiar objects. Everything was known and unknown simultaneously. A distant car passed, its lights briefly illuminating a patch of the floor. The shadow danced, a silent visitor, then disappeared into the gentle darkness. Time no longer had urgency. It flowed like the wind outside. Steady, calm, continuous. Every breath he drew merged with the rhythm of the room. Every exhale seemed to spread the quiet throughout the space. The lamp flickered once, briefly, and the room held its breath with him. There was no fear, no anticipation, just a sense of being fully present, with nothing to seek, nothing to avoid. Outside, the night listened. Inside, he remained, a single figure amidst stillness, an observer of shadows, light, and air. And in that quiet harmony, there was a gentle assurance. Everything here was safe. Everything here could wait. The curtain swayed again. The world beyond was still there. But it asked nothing of him, and he allowed himself to exist, simply completely, in the calm of that room. The night outside leaned closer, as if it wanted to listen to the quiet of the room. The old man shifted slightly in his chair, not from discomfort, but to feel the wooden arm beneath his hand. It was smooth, worn from decades of touch, each dent and curve holding a memory. He didn't need to recall, yet could sense without thought. The curtain swayed gently, catching a sliver of the pale streetlight. Its movement was slow, almost like a heartbeat, echoing through the room. Every sway brought a new shadow, and every shadow whispered calm. Nothing demanded attention. Everything was already held. Outside, a leaf scraped softly against the window. It seemed loud at first, then softened, blending into the rhythm of the night. The old man's eyes followed it briefly, then returned to the dim glow of the lamp. The floor creaked once, felt through the soles of his feet, a reminder that the house itself was alive, breathing quietly alongside him. His mind did not wander, did not construct stories or seek answers. It simply observed, absorbed by the shapes, movements, and spaces between objects. The air carried a faint warmth from the radiator, mingling with the cool scent of the night. It was subtle, a balance that made the room feel alive, without breaking its calm. From afar, a hum of the city reached him, distant yet present, another world reminding him life continued outside these walls. The curtain shifted again, catching a breath of wind from the slightly open window. Its motion seemed deliberate, a soft dance in stillness. For a moment, he felt connected to every subtle movement outside. Shadows on the floor stretched and bent, following the lamp's irregular light. Each shift nudged softly, reminding him nothing stays still, yet everything unfolds at its own pace. A passing car's light traced a brief line across the wall. He watched, unblinking, not anticipating, not reacting, simply witnessing the small, fleeting movement as part of the night's rhythm. His breathing deepened, slow and even, in and out, a quiet tide. Each exhale released tension. Each inhale absorbed the calm around him. Time became a suggestion rather than a measure. Moments lingered beside one another, each carrying the weight of quiet assurance. He did not need to close his eyes. The room held him. The floor, the walls, the lamp, the air, working together to create stillness. Outside, the night whispered softly. Inside, he remained in harmony. Nothing urgent. Nothing demanded more than presence. And in that presence, he discovered the vast, quiet universe of simply being, each breath an unspoken note in the endless song of night. The curtain moved once more. The lamp flickered lightly, yet the calm remained unbroken. He let himself be held fully and completely by the room, by the night, by the rhythm of existence itself. The room remained quiet, yet it was alive in its own subtle ways. The old man leaned back, letting the chair cradle him completely. His hands rested on his lap, fingers gently curled, not moving but aware of their weight, aware of the texture of his own skin. Outside, the window curtain fluttered slightly, as if testing the limits of the night air. A single shadow stretched across the floor, elongating with each subtle breeze. The movement was hypnotic, almost like the slow dance of time itself. A distant dog barked once, its echo bouncing softly against the walls of the empty street. It was not startling, only a reminder of life existing somewhere beyond the room. He listened without trying, absorbed without judgment. The ordinary sounds of the night became extraordinary. When noticed fully, the soft hum of the radiator, the creak of the floor, the whisper of the curtain. Each breath he took deepened his connection to the quiet world around him. Inhalation, exhalation, the rhythm of life undisturbed. The lamp cast gentle, wavering light, shadows forming and dissolving, with each subtle change of air. The old man's eyes traced them slowly, not out of curiosity, but as if greeting familiar friends he had long forgotten. A breeze from the slightly open window carried the scent of wet earth. It was delicate, not overwhelming, and yet it touched something deep within him. Memories that were not needed, surfaced just enough to be acknowledged, then gently receded into the calm. Outside, a car passed quietly. Its light streaked across the curtain, painting fleeting shapes on the floor. He observed without anticipation, accepting each moment as it came and went. The room's quiet was not empty. It held weight, texture, and sound. Everything was connected. The floor, the walls, the chair, the old man himself. His thoughts slowed further. No racing, no planning, only awareness of each subtle detail. The soft hum of the heater, the slight sway of the curtain, the warmth of his hands on his knees. Even the passing minutes felt intentional, like small steps in a journey without destination. A single shadow shifted again, catching the faintest motion in the corner of his vision. It did not demand focus, yet it was impossible to ignore. He let it pass without thought, accepting its presence as part of the night's rhythm. The old man's breathing became indistinguishable from the quiet itself, in and out, melding seamlessly with the sounds around him. The room held him completely, yet he felt no confinement, only presence, only calm, only the gentle, unbroken continuity of being. And as the night continued, he remained fully aware yet entirely still, absorbing the subtle, infinite details that made the ordinary extraordinary. The old man shifted slightly in his chair, not out of discomfort, but to acknowledge the subtle change in the air. The curtain moved again, this time with a deliberate grace, like a slow dance choreographed by the night itself. Each fold caught the faint lamplight, casting shapes that seemed almost alive. Outside, the wind whispered softly through the trees, their branches scratching lightly against one another. The sound was faint, yet it carried a rhythm that pulled at the edges of consciousness, like a secret the world had been keeping. He breathed in slowly, feeling the cool air brush against his face, the texture of night slipping into his lungs. Each exhale felt heavier than the last, as if letting go of something that had never truly existed. A distant clock chimed, its sound gentle but certain, marking time without demanding attention. The old man acknowledged it quietly, not as a reminder of passing hours, but as a note in the ongoing symphony of the night. Shadows shifted once more, forming strange, fleeting shapes that made the room feel larger than it was. He watched them without expectation, letting his eyes follow the ebb and flow of darkness and light. Outside, a soft drizzle began, each drop hitting the ground with a gentle patter, creating ripples and puddles, and adding another layer to the night's melody. The old man's hands rested on his knees, palms up, fingers slightly curled. He felt the warmth of his own skin, the subtle pulse in his veins, and understood the simplicity of being alive in this quiet moment. Every small sound, the creak of the floor, the rustle of the curtain, the distant bark of a dog, blended into a seamless composition. It was neither urgent nor idle. It simply existed. His eyes lingered on the window, where the curtain swayed and the street glimmered faintly. Reflections of passing cars flickered, but he did not turn to follow them. They were just part of the night, moving in and out of view without claim. The room itself seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting in sync with him. Walls, floor, ceiling, chair, all participated in the quiet pulse of being. His mind, once busy with countless thoughts, had become a quiet observer. There was no rush, no urgency, only the slow unfolding of time in the night. A single candle flickered on a shelf, its light casting tiny shadows that danced across the walls. He watched them, not as objects of focus, but as companions in the ongoing, gentle story of the evening. The rain outside softened, leaving behind the scent of wet earth and calm air. He inhaled it slowly, letting it fill the spaces between thought and awareness. The old man remained still, anchored yet free, immersed in the subtle, infinite details that made this ordinary night feel profound. And as he sat there, the quiet wrapped around him like a gentle, unbroken blanket, holding everything together, the room, the night, and himself. The old man leaned back slightly, letting the chair carry the weight of his body without effort. Outside, the curtain continued its slow, graceful dance, twisting and folding as if moved by invisible hands. A distant street lamp flickered, casting brief, wavering shadows across the room. Each flash revealed fragments of the familiar, then immediately hid them again, leaving only the sensation of movement and time. He inhaled, letting the cool night air fill his chest. It carried the faint scent of rain-soaked pavement, and something else, an undefinable trace of the world beyond the window. From somewhere far off, a dog barked once, sharp and fleeting. He did not startle, did not lift his gaze. The sound simply entered the room, folded itself into the quiet, and then dissipated as if it had never been there. His fingers brushed lightly against the arms of the chair, tracing the worn texture of the wood, not to examine it, but to feel the continuity of things, the small ordinary threads that held the night together. A faint light appeared outside, perhaps a passing car or a flicker of the moon between clouds. It reflected on the window, catching the folds of the curtain and turning them into moving streaks of silver. The old man watched the patterns without thought, letting them move through him like water moving through a quiet stream. The rain began again, soft this time, tapping lightly on the roof, creating tiny rhythms that joined the silent music of the night. The room seemed to expand with each sound, each reflection, each gentle stir of the air. Walls that had once felt static now appeared alive, absorbing the movement and light, breathing along with him. He closed his eyes briefly, not to sleep, but to allow himself to feel the room more deeply, to sense the shapes and textures of sound, the contours of shadow, the rhythm of the night outside. Time became elastic, stretching and bending in soft, imperceptible waves. Minutes, seconds, and hours had no claim here. Only presence mattered. His hands rested calmly on his lap, palms up, as if waiting to receive something that had no form, but carried the weight of all quiet things. Outside, the curtain flickered again, catching a sudden gust of wind. He smiled faintly, not at the motion itself, but at the perfect, gentle unpredictability of it. The candle on the shelf flickered, sending tiny, wavering shadows across the wall. Each movement was subtle, yet full of life. Even the chair beneath him seemed to settle, adjusting imperceptibly to his breathing, as though the room itself were aware of his stillness. He did not need to move. He did not need to speak. The night held him fully, and he held the night in return, quietly, gently, without hurry or desire. And as he sat, the curtain continued its endless, graceful dance. The candle flickered, and the night remained, undisturbed, infinite and deeply entirely present. The old man shifted slightly, letting his body mold to the chair's familiar shape. Outside, the curtain continued its slow, graceful movements, billowing gently as though each fold had a life of its own. A faint breeze whispered through the open window, carrying the cool scent of damp earth and distant rain. It brushed against his skin softly, like a reminder of the world beyond these four walls. Somewhere far away, a soft murmur rose, the sound of footsteps or a car passing, indistinct and fleeting. He did not follow it. He let it pass, allowing the quiet of the room to remain undisturbed. The candle on the shelf flickered again, casting uneven light across the old wallpaper. The shadows danced slowly, stretching across the room, and then retreating, leaving only the stillness in between. He lifted his hand slightly, tracing an invisible pattern in the air. No purpose, no direction, just the simple movement itself. Even in this small gesture, he felt the connection between himself and the room, a subtle rhythm that neither spoke nor demanded attention. Outside, the curtain bent to the rhythm of the wind, folding and unfolding like slow waves. The motion carried a kind of grace that words could not capture. It was enough to watch, to feel, to be present. A drop of rain tapped lightly on the window pane. Then another, then another. The soft, irregular rhythm became a gentle percussion that blended seamlessly with the flickering shadows and the occasional whisper of the wind. He leaned back, allowing himself to sink fully into the chair. The room supported him completely, as if every object within it knew exactly how to hold him. His breathing slowed naturally, inhaling and exhaling with the soft cadence of the night. No thought pushed for attention, no memory demanded recall. Only this quiet, unbroken moment existed. The candle's flame wavered, casting tiny sparks of gold across the table. He noticed the patterns in the shadows, the subtle arcs of light, the way each flicker seemed to stretch time slightly. Even the floor beneath him seemed alive, its wooden planks whispering softly with the shifts of the chair. Every element of the room was in harmony, moving and resting in a delicate balance. The night outside remained still yet alive, the wind carrying secrets of unseen trees, and the distant hum of life that he did not need to understand. He let the quiet envelope him fully, each breath deep and even, each heartbeat steady, without urgency or expectation. Time softened, stretching between the candle's glow and the curtain's gentle sway. The old man felt no need to count it, to name it, to understand it. It was simply present, and so was he. And in that presence, he found the subtle, infinite beauty of being completely still, completely held, and completely awake in the quiet. The old man's eyes followed the curtain's dance, each ripple of fabric carrying a story he could almost hear. The breeze outside whispered again, a soft, tentative movement that reminded him the world beyond these walls never truly stopped. He reached for the small wooden table beside him, fingers brushing the smooth, worn surface. The touch was deliberate, measured, feeling the subtle grooves and textures left by time's invisible hand. A distant clock chimed softly, its sound stretching across the room like a thread. He did not glance at it. Time in this space had lost its urgency. Every tick was simply a note in the quiet symphony that filled the room. Outside, the curtain swayed more energetically, then settled back, as if it had completed its brief performance. He noticed the way the light shifted with each movement, casting elongated shadows that crept along the floor and walls, then withdrew, leaving behind a softer, steadier darkness. His thoughts, usually so insistent, had become gentle companions now. They drifted by like the clouds of smoke from the candle, lingering for a moment, then moving on without demanding focus. The faint scent of rain continued to drift in, tinged with earthiness and distant green fields. He inhaled slowly, letting it fill the spaces between breaths, an invisible comfort that bound him to the room and the night beyond. A single droplet traced its path down the window pane, catching the candlelight in a tiny spark. It reminded him that even small, unnoticed movements could carry beauty if observed carefully. He stretched one hand, feeling the air's gentle resistance. There was no rush, no need for purpose, only the quiet acknowledgement of existence, each motion a small meditation in the flowing stillness of the room. The chair beneath him cradled his weight with ease. The floor held the chair, and the earth held everything. He marveled at the invisible network of support, the quiet architecture of holding that required no effort to appreciate. Outside, the wind seemed to whisper secrets only he could sense. Perhaps they were memories, perhaps they were not. He neither chased nor questioned them, simply letting them move through the space between the curtain's folds and the candle's flicker. His breathing became a soft rhythm, even unhurried, as if the night itself had taught him how to exist without tension. The shadows on the walls began to merge, forming vague shapes that shifted, without names, without identities. Yet there was comfort in this ambiguity, a silent understanding that not all patterns required meaning. He rested, fully aware, fully present, and in the delicate interweaving of light, shadow, sound, and air, he found a peace that had no beginning and no end. And for the first time that evening, he felt the full weight of that quiet, an enveloping calm that was neither lonely nor empty, but complete in its simplicity, holding him exactly as he was, and nowhere else needed to be. The night had deepened, settling over the small room like a soft blanket. The old man sat quietly in his chair, eyes half open, seeing nothing, yet sensing everything. The curtain by the window swayed gently in the breeze, moving slowly, almost deliberately, as if guided by an invisible hand. Every little movement, every soft whisper of wind soothed his mind. He didn't tilt his head, didn't move his hands. He simply felt. Was this a dream, or was it real? The room offered no answers, only the calm rhythm of quiet existence. The walls, the floor, the window, even the curtain They all seemed to move together, harmonizing into a gentle cadence. The old man's lips curved slightly into a faint smile. Nothing startled him. Nothing demanded his attention. This moment was enough. His hands rested loosely in his lap, fingers brushing lightly against the skin of his palms, reminding him he still existed. He still breathed. He still felt. Outside, the night air whispered through the window gap. The curtain danced with it, swaying lazily, casting faint shadows on the floor. Each movement was slow, deliberate, unhurried. The room and the night became one, a single entity, a quiet sanctuary. Light filtered through the gaps in the curtain, soft and intermittent, creating tiny flickers across the room. It wasn't bright, it wasn't sharp. It simply existed, like a gentle companion that spoke in silence. It's okay. Just breathe. Just be. There was no pressure, no urgency. Only the soft rhythm of the night, the whispering wind, the swaying curtain. Every detail settled into harmony. The old man's eyes grew moist, but he didn't blink. He didn't close them. He simply observed, letting the silence envelop him. His thoughts, his memories, his worries. They all faded, reduced to weightless echoes, leaving only stillness. In this quiet, he realized something profound. Moments never return, but feelings, this peace, the soft lull of night, they linger. They are permanent. And in that permanence, he found rest. The night stretched on, carrying a stillness that seemed to exist beyond time itself. The old man remained in his chair, a quiet sentinel in the dim room. The curtain continued its gentle sway, responding to the night air like a living thing, neither hurried nor hesitant. Each soft movement drew his gaze without asking for it. The room smelled faintly of old wood and distant rain. A memory flickered, long ago perhaps, a window left open, a breeze carrying scents of distant places. But the memory didn't press. It lingered quietly, like a companion who had waited patiently all these years. He shifted slightly, just enough to feel the weight of his body in the chair. His fingers traced invisible patterns in the air, slow, deliberate, almost mindful. The night had a rhythm, and he matched it without thinking. In that harmony, he felt connected. Not to the past, not to the future, but to the now. Outside, a soft rustle passed through the curtain, barely more than a sigh. The shadows it cast danced across the floor in slow arcs, stretching and folding into themselves. For a moment, the old man thought he saw a shape. Vague, fleeting. But he didn't chase it. There was no need. The movement itself was enough. His breath settled into a deep, even cadence. Each inhale and exhale became a quiet wave, washing over him, erasing tension, clearing space. He realized that nothing else mattered, not the ticking of the clock, not the distant hum of the city, not the pull of forgotten responsibilities. In this room, the ordinary became extraordinary. The mundane, the curtain, the chair, the dim light, was filled with life. Even the smallest shadow, the faintest whisper of wind, carried weight, beauty, and calm. It was a symphony of subtlety, and he was its audience. Time had softened. The night didn't move forward. It existed as a gentle canvas, holding everything without judgment. Every flicker of light, every sway of the curtain, became a note in a lullaby the world had forgotten to sing. And so he sat, eyes half closed, mind empty yet full. The night embraced him, carried him, and in that silent partnership, he felt the simple, profound truth. There is peace in noticing, in being present, in simply letting the moment unfold without interference. The faint moonlight spilled through the window, brushing the old man's face with a soft silver glow. The curtain, still swaying in the quiet night air, seemed alive, responding to an invisible rhythm. Each gentle movement drew his attention, not with urgency, but with a quiet invitation to observe. Outside, the world slept, yet within the room, everything pulsed softly with life. A small creak of the floorboard reminded him of the house's long history, of steps taken and voices heard. Yet there was no need to recall. These were just whispers of time, floating without pressure, floating without demand. He lifted his hand, letting the fingers hover above the armrest. A faint tremor in the air, the tiniest draft from the open window, brushed against them. He didn't move. The touch was enough. It was a gentle reminder that he was part of this moment, not as a controller, but as a witness. The night deepened. Shadows shifted across the room, dancing in patterns that had no names. Yet the shapes were familiar in their quiet persistence. A shadow stretched, then folded back on itself, as though the room itself breathed slowly, steadily, in time with his own rhythm. A distant sound, perhaps a bird calling, perhaps the wind, reached the edge of perception. He did not follow it, did not seek to understand. The sound was just another brush stroke in the quiet painting of the night. His ears, his mind, and his heart absorbed it without judgment, without expectation. The old man's eyes softened. Each blink, each slow movement of his eyelids mirrored the sway of the curtain. In the subtle repetition, he discovered a kind of meditation, a quiet harmony with the gentle pulse of everything around him. Even the simplest things became sacred, the air moving across the floor, the scent of old wood, the moonlight falling unevenly on the walls. Nothing shouted for attention, yet everything was noticed. He felt a calm awareness that didn't need words. Time had no edge here. The night did not demand. The moonlight did not judge. The shadows did not compete. And in that balance, he found a quiet joy, a sense of presence that was both delicate and profound. He breathed, and the night breathed with him, endlessly, peacefully. The room seemed to settle even deeper into stillness, as if it had found the exact position it had been searching for all night. The curtain slowed its movement, no longer swaying freely, but breathing in smaller, softer motions. The old man noticed this change without thinking about it. He simply allowed it to be. Moonlight traced a thin line along the edge of the floor, stretching quietly toward the chair where he sat. It felt like a path, not meant to be followed, only observed. His shoulders relaxed further, sinking into the familiar shape of the chair, as though it had been waiting patiently for him to arrive at this exact state of ease. He listened to his breathing, not controlling it, not adjusting it. Each inhale arrived gently. Each exhale left without resistance. Somewhere between those two moments, there was a space, small, silent, and comforting. That space became his focus, not by effort, but by natural curiosity. The house offered subtle sounds, a distant tick, a soft settling of wood, the faint hum of night far beyond the walls. None of these interrupted the calm. They belonged to it. Each sound appeared, lingered briefly, and faded, leaving no trace behind. The old man's thoughts moved more slowly now, like clouds drifting across a wide, empty sky. A memory tried to form but dissolved before it could take shape. There was no need to hold on to anything. The present moment was complete on its own. His eyes remained open, yet unfocused, resting gently on the space where the curtain met the window. The contrast between light and shadow blurred, becoming softer, less defined. Even the edges of the room seemed to melt into one another, creating a sense of quiet unity. Warmth spread subtly through his chest, not intense, not emotional, just steady and reassuring. It felt like being wrapped in a familiar silence, one that asked nothing and promised nothing, yet offered deep comfort. Time moved without being counted. The night did not advance. It simply existed. And within that existence, the old man rested, fully present, fully calm, allowing the quiet between moments to carry him gently forward. The curtain barely moved now. Its gentle rise and fall had slowed, as if it too was growing tired in the most peaceful way. The old man noticed how the room felt warmer, not in temperature, but in presence. The night no longer felt like something outside the window. It felt like it had quietly stepped inside. He shifted slightly in the chair, not to adjust, but to settle more deeply. The movement was slow, unhurried, and ended before it fully began. His body seemed to understand comfort instinctively, finding the exact balance without instruction. The moonlight on the floor softened further, its edges fading into shadow. What once looked like a line now looked like a gentle glow, resting rather than pointing. The old man's gaze followed it for a moment, then rested nowhere at all. Seeing became effortless. Breathing continued, calm and steady. Each breath felt wider than before, as if the air itself had more room to move. There was no beginning to the inhale, no clear end to the exhale. They flowed together, forming a slow rhythm that felt ancient and familiar. The house seemed to listen with him. Walls held the silence carefully. The ceiling hovered without weight. Even the floor felt supportive in a quiet, reliable way. Everything had a place, and everything was content to remain there. A thought passed through his mind, light and brief, like a leaf touching water. It left no ripple. The mind no longer reached forward or backward. It stayed gently suspended, resting in what already was. The old man's hands lay still, warmth spreading through his fingers. There was a sense of being held, not by anything visible, but by the calm itself. Nothing pressed, nothing pulled. The moment was complete, needing no change. Outside, the world continued in ways he did not need to know. Inside, the night felt settled, familiar, almost welcoming. The old man remained there, awake yet deeply rested, as the quiet carried him onward without effort. The night did not deepen. It stayed exactly as it was, steady and unchanging, like a calm hand resting on the moment. The old man remained in the chair, not waiting for anything, not expecting a shift. There was comfort in knowing that nothing needed to happen next. The curtain paused, then moved again, just enough to remind the room that air still existed. It was a gentle motion, barely noticeable, like the slow turning of a page that no one was reading. The old man did not follow it with his eyes. He already knew it was there. His breathing continued without effort. The chest rose softly, then fell, each movement smaller than the last. Breaths no longer felt separate. They blended into one long, quiet motion, as if breathing itself had forgotten how to stop. The room held its shape. Shadows rested where they had settled earlier. The moonlight remained faint and patient, no longer trying to reach farther across the floor. Everything had arrived where it needed to be. The old man's thoughts no longer formed sentences. They appeared as sensations instead, a sense of warmth, a sense of safety, a sense of being exactly where he belonged. None of them asked to be named. None of them stayed long enough to interrupt the stillness. His shoulders felt lighter now, as if they had quietly let go of a weight they had carried for years. The release did not come with relief or surprise. It came naturally, like setting something down when hands grow tired. Even time seemed unsure of itself. Seconds did not stack into minutes. Minutes did not move forward. Everything rested side by side, calm and equal, without direction. The night air touched his face gently. It did not cool or warm him. It simply existed, surrounding him evenly, without edge or pressure. The old man remained open to it, relaxed, unmoving. Nothing called for attention, nothing asked for memory. The moment held itself together without effort, wide and quiet, allowing rest to continue without needing sleep. And in that steady calm, the night stayed with him. Nothing changed, and that was what made the moment feel complete. The old man remained where he was, resting in a calm that did not need improvement. The chair held him gently, as if it understood the exact shape of his body and had adjusted itself long ago. The curtain moved once more, slower now, almost thoughtful. It did not rush. It did not linger. It simply followed the air as it passed, then returned to rest. The room accepted this motion without reacting, as if it had seen it many times before. The old man's breathing continued in the background, so soft it blended into the silence. Each breath felt less like an action, and more like a quiet presence, something that happened without instruction. There was no need to follow it. It took care of itself. The floor beneath the chair felt solid and dependable. Beneath that, the ground waited patiently. Beneath that, the earth held everything without complaint. Layers of support, steady and quiet, all the way down. The old man did not think about them, yet somehow he felt them. Thoughts drifted in slowly, then faded before becoming clear. They did not carry stories or memories. They were only impressions, light and incomplete, like reflections on still water. Nothing stayed long enough to disturb the calm. The moonlight shifted slightly, not brighter, not dimmer, just different enough to remind the room that time still existed somewhere. But here, time felt distant. It did not hurry. It did not pull. It waited. The old man's hands rested openly now, fingers loose, palms warm. There was no tension left to release. Whatever needed to soften had already done so. The body had found a position it did not wish to change. The air felt even and smooth, touching everything the same way. It asked nothing. It offered nothing. It simply surrounded the room, allowing rest to deepen naturally. Nothing needed to end. Nothing needed to begin. The moment remained wide and gentle, holding the old man exactly where he was and letting stillness continue to grow. The room did not shift its mood. It stayed exactly as it was, calm and unbothered, as if it had decided this moment was worth keeping. The old man remained seated, not waiting for anything, not expecting anything, simply present within the quiet that surrounded him. The curtain rested now, barely moving, its earlier motion settling into stillness. The window behind it reflected no urgency, no outside demands. Whatever existed beyond the glass felt far away and unimportant. The old man's breathing continued at its own gentle pace. It no longer felt separate from the room. Breath and silence blended together, creating a steady rhythm that did not need counting. In this rhythm, effort had no place. His shoulders felt loose, their weight fully supported. There was no memory of tension, no trace of strain. The body had finished adjusting. It had arrived at rest. Light softened along the walls, spreading evenly without drawing attention to itself. Shadows did not stretch or shrink. They simply remained, calm shapes resting where they belonged. Thoughts had almost completely faded now. What remained was not emptiness, but space. A wide, open space where nothing pressed forward and nothing pulled back. The mind no longer searched for meaning. It allowed the moment to be enough. The floor beneath the chair felt cool and steady. The room felt grounded, anchored, unmoving. Everything had found its place and chose to stay there. The old man's face remained relaxed, expressionless in the most peaceful way. There was no smile, no frown, only ease. His eyes rested, heavy but untroubled, as if they had forgotten the need to open again. Time passed gently, almost unnoticed. It did not announce itself. It simply flowed around the stillness, respecting it. Nothing interrupted the calm. Nothing needed to. The quiet held everything together, allowing rest to deepen naturally, without effort, without instruction, without end. Nothing signaled an ending. The room remained exactly as it was, calm and steady, as if it had quietly decided that nothing more was required. The old man stayed where he was, not holding on to the moment, not letting it go, simply resting within it. The curtain no longer moved. It hung softly, its earlier motion now only a distant memory. The window reflected darkness without depth, a smooth surface where nothing needed attention. Breath moved in and out without effort. It did not deepen or slow on purpose. It simply continued, gentle and unremarkable, like a sound that had always been there and always would be. The old man's body felt complete in its stillness. There was no urge to shift, no instinct to adjust. Muscles rested in their most natural state, fully supported, fully at ease. Thought had faded entirely now, not pushed away, not replaced, simply finished. What remained was awareness without focus, presence without effort. The room seemed to breathe with him. Walls, floor, air, and silence shared the same quiet rhythm. Nothing stood apart. Everything belonged. Time had lost its direction. There was no before and no after. Only this gentle pause, wide and unchanging, holding everything softly in place. The old man's face remained peaceful. His features had softened beyond expression, beyond emotion. There was no story left to tell, no memory asking to return. The quiet did not grow deeper. It did not need to. It stayed exactly where it was, complete and sufficient. Rest spread outward, not like sleep arriving, but like rest already achieved. There was nowhere else to go, nothing else to reach. And so the moment continued. Unmarked, unbroken, unending. The night did not close, the room did not fade. Everything simply remained, calm, steady, and still.